rest of the class, because last class's video is recorded, but can't share it somehow. I'll figure that out, or I need your help. Okay. Do I can you squish further? Don't see this. Can you go? Maybe. All right. So first things first, we are going to talk about functions today. So that can be found in the slides, part one, week one, and sorry, not week one, part one, week two, in the functions folder. And in there are two slides. I'll come to that in a second. Before we do that, the project for our course has been uploaded. Hold on, I need to do the chat thing. Admit all. Can you not admit all by default? Okay. So there are two projects assigned here. One is due on the 30th of October, and one is due on the 10th of November. Um, okay, I think I dated those correctly. So, the first project we will come and I will explain the project properly, maybe next class or something. But this is just an overview of the project. So the first one is a group project. You will be implementing the 2048 game, which is this particular game here. And we will be implementing it not like a visual board like this, but mainly with a black and white terminal window implementation. Some startup code is also provided along with this code. Along with that, you also get some you get nothing actually, this PDF file, which basically says that it's submittable and how to submit the thing. So for this one, you will submit your code and we will discuss how to use these two files. You will see that we currently will have two files instead of our single file so far. So we will discuss how that works and we will understand the code. Can I download the code right now? So this is the code in there. We will discuss about that code in not today, but later. Apart from that, project number two, which is due on October 30th, so I guess that's project part one, is a credit card verification code. So you will need to basically implement a piece of code that will verify a given credit card number using an algorithm called the learn algorithm. And there is basically a video along with an explanation, and we will also discuss how to deal with that. We will need arrays and stuff to implement this particular code. We will need to understand what is required in terms of solving this particular problem, and then we will need to write code, submit flowchart diagrams, and a dry run of that particular code. Okay, and we will discuss all of that later, maybe next class. But for now, today we are going to start our discussion with functions. Okay, so first things first, let us understand the syntax of writing functions. So by functions, we mean that we are um, now okay, so before I do that, up to now, we have been writing code so far that just utilized a single file, and we had these sort of things that, computed this thing, or process had a process block that computed the entire process. And we had a flowchart diagram for those and stuff like that, right? Complicated code, less complicated code, but everything else or everything in the same program or the same thing. Now, today we are going to understand this int main bit that we have been writing so far, and this returns 0 bit. We were using these two and we did not understand or discuss about them properly. So today is that day in a sense. So IO stream using namespace std, and let's say int main. Now this is a function. Okay, this function returns 0. It is a special function. So this is a function. However, it is also a special function, uh, one of its kind, so to speak, because of the name main, which defines entry point of code. There can be other functions as well that we can use, and other functions are usually useful when we are dealing with certain predefined libraries or self-defined functions. The point of writing a function or writing code in terms of functions is that you are breaking down your code into smaller components. Okay, so essentially, let me show you a diagram that would make a bit more sense. This is the recursion diagram that I would like to discuss. We will discuss about this diagram much more later. But imagine that you are writing a program, ignore the right hand side for now. Imagine that you are writing a program and your program is supposed to print out this sort of a valley and this nice picture or whatnot. Now you see here that there are multiple parts in this picture that has common things, right? There are trees around here, there are mountains around here, there are birds around here, and so on. So instead of writing code for individual mountains one after the other, right? Mountain 1, mountain 2, mountain 3, and mountain 4, tree 1, tree 2, and so on. You can imagine writing a small piece of code that will have certain things common about mountains, right? Then you can maybe pass up and say that, okay, so this is a taller mountain, or this is a more ragged mountain, or things like that, right? Even for trees, you can say that this is an oak tree, or that's a pine tree, or whatever, right? But trees have some common things, right? So that is the point of writing functions. That is, you can figure out these sort of common things, group them together into small pieces of code that you can reuse over and over again. So now you can basically stamp out multiple trees, different types, using that tree function, stamp out valleys, stamp out mountains, stamp out birds, and you have your, so to speak, image coming out of the thing. Does the overall concept sort of make sense? Type in yes or no in the chat. That would really help. Another way to think about this thing would be, let's say that Rolls-Royce is basically creating a production pipeline, and they would need to, modularize. That's the key word here. That is modular programming. You're breaking the thing into modular components. You remember modular kitchen components and whatnot. So modularize the code. Why is it helpful to modularize the code? It helps in testing the thing out, right? So for example, let's say that also it helps in having a clean picture of how to, in a sense, create the code. So for example, one thing for the 2048 game, you can imagine we have left, right, up, down buttons. So you can have functions that are modular and that handle these four things separately, right? There can be a function that handles the new game button. There can be a function that can show blah things, right? So things like that. Let's say Rolls-Royce has this production pipeline that has a part that handles the engine, the part that handles the noise, the part that handles the seat upholstery and whatnot, right? Now, let's say that suddenly some seats of Rolls-Royce are starting to tear, or maybe they are starting to, the fabric is not getting better, or it's not doing well. So basically now you have an ability to sort of focus on that department compared to the engine department. You know that it does not matter for this thing, right? So that is the idea of modularizing code. It's easy to test, it's easy to understand, and it's also easy to think about when we are writing pieces of code, right? So first things first, we are going to use a predefined function. We have seen none, hopefully, but for string libraries and stuff, there are predefined functions for copy and stuff. We discussed that last class. Copying a string, finding the length of a string. We also looked at this particular website, c++.com, with that string library that had all of those functions. So for example, std string here, that also uses the namespace std, so to speak, right? So basically we have this particular thing. I'll turn on my video because I'm moving my hand around. So basically you will have that particular set of functions, and you can scroll down and you will see that copy is there, compare was there, many other functions are there. We will not discuss them right now. Okay, cool. So today we are going to write a piece of code. Quick question. I'll type it out in the chat. You guys say yes or no. Given what we have learned so far, can we print a any integer number, any integer number? Question mark. It's sort of a trick question, but yeah. Say yes or no. So for example, what I mean is maybe I can have int a equals to 99 or something, and we can have c out a that prints it out. Hopefully that's 99. Now I want to print out a random number. Can you print out a random number? I don't think we can yet. We have not learned how to. And why is random numbers important? Well, random numbers are everywhere. Whenever, let's say you are playing a game, let's say Pokemon or whatever game you are currently playing, there is some opponent agent that you are playing against, or basically some randomness is involved. Fighting games, scores, Mario jumps, it doesn't jump that much. Not that Mario's jumps are actually deterministic and fixed, but the game Mario, but the the what are they called, whatever the enemies that come to the thing, they are randomly generated. So even when you're playing Pokemon or whatnot, you are attacking and there is a random chance of this much attack and whatnot, right? You're playing cards, right? So randomly sorting the cards and basically dividing them up into players, right? So if you're playing poker, 5 card poker or whatever you have, or whatever game, but you have to randomly sort the particular set of 52 cards. Each player will have 4 numbers, so you can represent that using an array, or 5 numbers depending upon what poker you're playing. But 5 numbers each player, so each user id will have 5 array elements, and each representing, I don't know, 0 to how many cards are there? Ace 1 through 9, 10, jacks, kings, and queens. Right. So basically some defined range, as Lance is saying, 0 to 1 to 100. Otherwise, it will be a garbage number. So on that note, the random number today we are going to generate will be of size integer. Will it be of size integer? It's going to be within 64,000, more or less. So we are going to start then. You guys get the picture. So let's say C++ random number. Now, remember one thing. Uh, Rand computers cannot generate random numbers. Computers can run programs. Programs are always fixed. User gives an input, the computer gives the same output. But we do play games and randomness is a thing. So how does a computer deal with randomness? Well, it has to do with how the use. So there are random number generators that we will talk about. The srand thing will also come into play. There are random number generators that a computer uses to generate, but at the end of the day, whatever, computers use a special hardware device to generate random numbers. Hardware devices such as crystals that are found in nature, that are mined, and they have an oscillation frequency on their own, right? You remember, like, different atoms have, let's say, decaying properties or whatnot properties, right? So the rate of decay or the random crystal oscillations, or maybe a user is interacting with a computer, mouse is moving around, I am opening up this browser, so these are all random behaviors to the computer. It will record this in some some way, right? Some numbers, you are moving them around, maybe a string of numbers of the mouse position, how many tabs open, not that detailed, but anything that can be used to record some randomness, then we can use that to generate random numbers on demand. So that's the basic idea of generating random numbers. There has been fiascos about random numbers being generated that were not really random numbers. Uh, so there is the IBM random number scandal. You can actually Google that, where they said that their random number is technically random, but again, it looked so predictable that technically it cannot be called random. So there was that fiasco that happened. But yeah, so random number generation is a thing. The modulo operator comes into play quite a lot. Random numbers are critical when we are talking about credit card verification and all of those sort of things. Um, okay, not for this project though, that does not contain any randomness. All right. So how do we generate random numbers? Well, Geeks for Geeks is good website, but we are always going to stick to two reference websites. One is c++.com. I would prefer that you also use cppreference.com. I'll give that link in a second later. But in general, this is the link for rand, the rand function. But in general, you can use c++.com as a good resource for these sort of example codes and how to use these sort of libraries and functions. So you can see that it is going to have some old libraries getting included. This is mainly for C code, and you can run this code. stdio has become iostream nowadays. Stdlib, I have to check. That is why I sometimes prefer cpp reference. Cpp reference rand. So that's the cpp reference rand function. This is, I want the std one. Std rand. Yeah, so that is cstdlib. So here's what happened. You will oftentimes see these things. Do not get scared. That's a part and parcel of C++ programming. You see stdlib. Stdlib used to be a library for C programming language. C++ basically adds on top of C, so it can use C code as well very easily. C code can run on a C++ computer or program, and that is why you will see stdlib.h has become cstdlib. You will also see that the header file that I included for your game project, one of the two files, is also a .h file. We are going to write our own library for this particular game. We have written single programs already. Now we have written books. Now it's time to write a library. That's the basic point. So firstly, let us understand functions here. So we are going to include this library, cstdlib. We are going to use this rand function here. We do not need the std colon colon every time because we are going to do using namespace std. So let's begin. So we have this piece of code. I'm going to remove the comments to remove the clutter. And I'm going to include after iostream, but before using namespace std. Well, it doesn't really matter, but yeah. Mainly, I try to keep the using namespace thing below all the libraries. So include cstdlib. I could also have done hash include stdio.h with double quotes, but let's use this one. Here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically use the rand function. The rand function, similar to how cout and cin comes from iostream, rand comes from cstdlib. It also, cstdlib is basically standard library. it contains a lot of useful functions, rand being one of them. It contains many other functions. You can go through a list, maybe we will do that at some point. Here's the cstd library. These are all the functions that it defines. A2I, A2F, all of those that we discussed last class are defined in the cstd library. There is sort algorithms are also there, search algorithms, blah blah and blah. Cool. For rand function. Now, what does this rand function do? So first, let us understand one thing. Signature of our function. Our function is a block of code. I needed to draw this thing in class, but yeah, I'll try my best. Remember this diagram. This diagram is important. Our function is just a block of code that looks like this. I'll draw this with, I could have used draw.io. Yeah. Draw.io is going to go paid very soon. If that happens, what will I do? Any discard? Are you sure? Yep. Okay, decide getter function vector. So we will have a function. This function can take in a certain number of arguments or input. Right? The function that we are going to use today is the rand function out of many. That function does not have any arguments, but in general, I want us to think about it in terms of our assignment 3. That is, somebody has given you the input, you have to create the output, right? The input is provided, the output is required in a variable, you write the process block, right? So basically, this is what this means, that you have some input. The inputs can be from, I can require 0 inputs or more than 0. So more than equals to 0 inputs or 0 number of inputs. And outputs can also be more than equals to 0 number of outputs. Your function can choose to not output anything or return anything. Remember, one other confusion that students usually have with this thing is, let me write this thing first. Outputs greater than equals to 0 output things. I should not say greater than equals to 0. In a sense, C++ allows at max one thing as output. 0 things are also fine. Give me a second. Control X, don't need a text box there. Text box I need here. Okay, cool. Save as. I think if I give you the draw.io file, I think that is also useful. Let me just, I'll also paste the PNG down. There's the draw.io file. I'll give you the PNG file. So what I mean is that think of these things as some input is coming in and you are processing it into some output, correct? So right now we are going to use this rand function and we are looking at the signature of a function. These three things define the signature. So that is in C++ or in general programming languages, this is the syntax. This is the return output. Then you have the function name. Then within parentheses, or different languages have different ways of stating this, you will have input underscore 0, input, and these are all variable names. You can change them, but these are the list of parameters that can come in. And this is what we call as the signature of a function. And then in C++, you will have a curly bracket, and this is where the function's processing block remains. Okay, so this is how we define a function. What is the output of the function? What are the inputs of the function? Give the function a name like you name a variable. And then once I get this to this block, I'll get the inputs, I'll process them, I'll return the output. And that is the thing. Remember one thing, returning is not the same as printing. Returning is something that I give you guys a task to do. You process the task and you send that task back to me in a file. Printing would mean that you are sort of announcing to the world that this was printed, right? So we are not printing in the terminal. Main program will be asking a small function to do a task. Like right now, I'm going to be asking rand to create a random number. And basically, I will write it up right now. I will be storing it into a variable called a, right? The rand function is not going to print out the random number and then return it back. No, the rand function is just going to create a random number and send it back to the main program Rand function has its own block of code. It expects no input and it returns one output. What is that output? That output is the random number. The rand output returns a random number to the main program. Like similarly, how main returns 0 to its calling function, that is the operating system. It's a special function, but main is calling rand. Rand processes itself, gets a random number, returns it back to main. Now, quick question, do you guys agree that if this code runs, A will get something? But what I want us to tell me is, will it, this code as it is now, do you think it will print anything? Do you guys agree with Tanner? Yep. So I ran this code and you see that it printed nothing. I'll run it once more and it prints nothing. Let me just give you this code in Discord. Try this code out on your own machine and see that it does not output anything. Now, let's do one thing. I'm going to say cout A. Now, hopefully, I'll get a random number. I run this and I get this random number 1804289,383. That's the integer size random number. I can actually directly just print out the random number without a rand in between or without a variable in between. Cout rand, this thing, and if I run this, I get this thing. Now, quick question. Uh, if you run this code, I'm going to paste this code on Discord. I want to do an experiment because I think everybody here is going to get the same random number. And let me welcome you to computer randomness. Could you guys run this code on your machine, the last one, wherever you can, online GDB or Visual Studio or wherever, and just on Discord, print out or paste the random number that you get. Okay, good. I'll give you guys a minute. Could you guys please type in the machine that it was generated on as well? If it was online GDB or a Mac machine or a Windows machine. I mean, also Visual Studio or Xcode, whatever IDE you are using, identify whatever you're using. I guess you guys get the idea of what is going on. So we need to understand this thing as to why Windows is giving 41. And if you run it again, I believe you will again see 41. And if I run the online GDB thing again, I believe I'll see that large number with 383. If I run it again, yep, that's the number. So what is going on? So it's a simple enough thing. Let me show you how computers generate random numbers. Computers generate random numbers by using a function, and that function usually starts off with a number called a seed. Let's say that the seed number is set to, I don't know, 8 or something, right? What the function does is it's some piece of code that does this. So it basically says that I'm going to set the next number equals to seed. And then what I'm going to do is every time you call this function, I'm going to generate a new number using my previous number. So you can say num equals to, and this is just a dumb formula on my end. It is not like a real random formula. Real random formulas are much more weirder. So let's, I don't know, this mod 10 and plus num -1 or something, right? Some random equation like this. And let's say that the starting number was 8. Can you guys type out in Discord if this was the starting number given seed is 8 and you are generating the next number? Can you guys on Discord help me type out the next few numbers? I will do this with you as well. So the first number will be 8. The next number will be 8 plus 5, so that is 13. 13 mod 10 is going to be 3. 3 plus 8 is going to be 11. Minus 1 is 10. So the next number is 10. Cool. The next number will be 10 plus 5. So that's 15 mod 10. So that is, let me copy this thing. So the next number will be, this num becomes 10. So, and this num becomes 10. And 10 plus 5 becomes 15. Mod 10 becomes 5. 5 plus 10 is 15. Minus 1 becomes 14. Cool. That's the next number. It's still kind of random. Can you guys help me give the next number? If 14 is the current number, it will be 14, 19, 9 plus 14. 24 or 22? 14 plus 5 is 19. Mod 10 is 9. Plus 14 is 23. Minus 1, 22. Right, Patrick? Am I wrong? 14 plus 5 is 19. Mod 10 is 9 plus 14. 9 plus 14 is going to be 23 minus 1, 22, right? Okay. So that is how random numbers are generated. You guys get the idea a bit. Not this exact formula, but some formula along those lines. And I think this one's a better one than the IBM one. IBM used this formula. It had usually, oftentimes, a mod comes into play whenever you're doing randomness. It helps you in shrinking the size of the thing, right? Anywho, coming back. So that is how random numbers are generated. And now, given this, let me open the chat and Discord. Wherever you guys get that thing. Oh, you are also doing this. This was a bad idea to have two chat windows open. Okay. Yeah, anywhere you guys want to type in, that's fine. So now does it make sense as why all of you are getting the same number? Because it is starting from the same seed every time you are running this code. Does that make sense? What that means is, let's have cout rand endl. I want us to tell me first what this code will output before running this code. So I have two rands getting printed out. Can you guys tell me, will I get two same random numbers? That is, will I get R1, the first random number, and that, and R2, the exact same random number, sorry, R1 again, the exact same random number. Or this is option 1. And you know what? Let me actually type out some options. Give me a moment. I have a larger question. Let's also discuss what happens if we run this twice. So option 1 is, first run, you get both R1 and R1. And second run, you guys will get again two same random numbers, but different from the first one. Or option 2, first one is R1, R1, second one is R1, R1 as well. Or option 3, first one is R1, second one is R2, second one run is again R1, second one is R2. So given this code, I will post it on Discord though, but don't run it. Think of it first and then run it and verify which option do you think applies, or none of them. Option 1, 2, or 3. Option 3, right? Because it is still starting from the same thing, but the next time it is generating a number, it is using this formula, right? Where was that formula thingy? It is using this formula. So first time it runs it, it is always going to get 8. Then it is going to get 10. Next time you run it, it is again starting at 8 and 10, 8 and 10, 8 and 10, and that is what is happening. Does this make sense? How weird randomness is in computers, right? For example, you guys can generate random numbers on the fly, right? You guys, human beings in a sense, have no issue generating random numbers. We can actually prove that. Let's do a random number test on Discord. I'll type in a random number from 1 to 20. You guys also type in a random number from 1 to 20. Let's say I'll type in 13. Type in a, well, this is not really a random number, but you guys can type it in. Go ahead and type out your random numbers from 1 to 20. Let's see how random we are, right? Not an issue whatsoever. Cannot even find a formula for wherever, either in Teams or in Discord, cannot even find a formula that matches, right? So that's what I mean by randomness that humans can generate and randomness that computers sort of mimic. We call these things as not truly random, but pseudo random numbers. Okay. So let me verify this thing. I get 383 last thing and 86 again. Let me run this thing again. I get the same two set of random numbers. So now let us look at the other library. So when we searched for rand, do you guys remember that we were looking at this code? And before that, there was this srand, right? What is srand? Well, it's basically setting the seed of the random number generator. So it basically gives you a function that allows you to set the seed. So imagine that you're setting the seed of the function here, but before that, let's say srand, when I say, let's say 20, then basically in a sense, seed gets set to 20, and now the random number generator is no longer going to generate 8, 10, 14. No, no, no. It is going to start at 20. So it starts at 20. Then the next number is 20 plus 5 is 25. Mod 10 is 5 plus num is 20. So 25 minus 1. So 24. The next number is basically going to be 24 plus 5. So 29. 29 mod 10 is 9 plus 24 is 9 plus 24 is 33 minus 1 is 32 and so on and so forth, right? So let us try to do that. I am going to use the srand function. Where do I get the srand function? Well, it is also in the cstd library. I can search or Google that thing. So srand library, and I can go to c++.com or cppreference.com. Both of these websites are good. And here do you see this is the signature of the function. srand does not return anything and it accepts one input seed as a parameter, right? Let us look at the function definition of rand or the signature of rand. So the signature of the rand function, CPP reference, you can see rand function does not take in any arguments, but it does return an integer. Do you see that main also, our main program also had a similar signature, right? It does not take in any arguments for the moment and it returns an integer. What integer did it return? Well, it returned a 0. Rand function, on the other hand, returns the number, the random number. So let us now set up the seed. So I'm going to call srand. I do not need std colon colon srand, and I can just directly type in srand like we are doing here, but you don't have that. Yeah, ignore that, but yeah, that's also fine. And let's set the seed, my favorite seed, 42, let's say. And I can just run this code and I get an error because of a missing semicolon. And I run this code again and I get 7187616670859270, right? Can you guys please set the seed to 42 like here and tell me what are the two numbers? You know what? Set the seed to something else. Hold on. 1337. Cool. Set the seed to this particular number and try and see how you guys, what random numbers would you get? And essentially, ignore the options for now. Just type out the random numbers that you got from this code. I believe you will get, all of us will get the exact same random number. Be, I'm not sure if it is Windows or Linux specific or online GDB specific. Would be fun to see. Oh, it is Tanner, what's your device? Online GDB or I think the same as Kyra's device. Yep. Anybody with a Windows machine that can help me out? Windows with Visual Studio, maybe? Danny, what machine? Anybody with a Linux or a Mac machine? Can anybody verify the Windows random number as well? Yep, Left and Danny have the same Windows Visual Studio machine, and they have their own function, and they are generating that. They How do they have their own function? It comes from the compiler. The library changes over time, and somebody has the older version of the library, somebody has a newer version of the library. Mac has a different version of the library, as you can see from Jackson's answer in Teams. But if you guys run it again though, so for example, if I run it on online GDB, I don't get the same as that of Tanner, which is very fun. I have no idea why. But if I run it again though, I will get what Tanner had. Oh, I didn't run it last time, maybe. Okay, with 1337, I get the same exact thing as Tanner, right? Or the people with online GDB. Awesome. But do you see, it is always going to return the same set of numbers or same set of random numbers. People really like this behavior in computer science, though. Why? Because this is going to deal with randomness, but you want to check your code, right? Let's say somebody found some issue, and they don't usually do this, but in a far off example, you can say that okay, this code works, but for the seed of this code maybe has Pokemon game and randomness is going on, and let's say for seed 567 suddenly it breaks. Some particular random thing happens, it goes into some piece of code that maybe was accessing a random array location, suddenly it went out of bounds, some error happened, some if condition was not checked, and then one can say okay, this was the random number that led to that error, right? So that sort of is a testing mechanism. So it is very useful for computers to be able to generate fixed trajectories of randomness, pseudo randomness to speak. Okay, so now comes the question, how do I actually generate true random numbers? Well, in order to do that, I need to make sure that the seed is different every time I run this code. Okay, if I keep the same seed every time, I will get the same numbers every time, as is evidence from right now, as is evident from right now. But if I can change the seed every time I run, I can basically just use that, right? So I will say int seed equals to rand, and let's say I'll provide the seed here. Quick question, does or will this work? I will not paste this code. I want you guys to answer me. Will this code work in and be able to generate random numbers, now new random numbers every time I run? So for example, if I ran it now, I got 854,098 and blah. If I run it again and stuff, will I get new numbers again? If not, why not? If yes, are you sure? Why not? You guys can speak if you want to unmute yourself. Well, it has a range though. It does get a seed. It is getting a seed. Random number is going to generate a random number within a range. And let's say it generates a seed this time 324, and that gets into the thing. Exactly, Kara. Because the initial random number is from the default seed. So the random number will always be the same exact random number. So every time it will be the same exact seed. We can actually verify this by running this code, that we can just print out the seed separately, maybe with an ENDL. And if we run this code, we will see that the seed every time is the same. Seed is that 383 number. If I run it again, I still get the same seed 383 number. So how do we make sure that, because there are programs that are actually random, right? It runs randomly every time. So how do we make sure that whenever we run this code, we get the same different random numbers every time? Any ideas? We would need to seed it with something that is changing every time. Every time, or every time we run this code, or whenever we run this code. Any ideas on what can be the seed number that changes every time? Come on, this is a joke. You have to answer this thing. What changes every time? Yep. Sorry for that weird joke, but yep, time changes every time. And so what we will do is we will seed our random number generator. We will seed our random number generator with time, right? So that is what this does. You can see that it seeds the random number generator with time. There is a function called time that gets the current system time. Where can we get this function? Well, it comes from the time library. It reads the thing from the system and gives that number, which we can then use to, seed our random number generator. So we will just import that library. So hash include, we can do time.h, we can also do ctime. Either way, it's fine. And instead of setting the seed to rand, we will set the seed to time. Time function takes in some arguments. Let's not get into that. Let's just pass null for time. That gets you the current time. That seed is then going to be given here. We can print out the seed, I think. You know what? That should be better. Hash include seed time. Instead of rand, we will initialize it with time. And if we run this now, time is 557 blah. You get this random numbers, that is 216 blah blah 037, 103 blah blah 897, and time was 172,848 blah blah 557. If I run it again, 172,8,573 has happened, 300,915 has happened. Okay, so that is the time library and its predefined function. Run this code and now paste the two random numbers that you guys are getting, and let's see if we are indeed generating random numbers now. In whatever machine, does not matter. Hmm. Two runs and Tanner gets different numbers every time. Awesome. Okay, while you guys do that, so that was the random number thing, and now you guys can generate random numbers. How can you guys please use this code? I will ask you to do this on Discord. Modify this code to print two random numbers between 15 and 27. For example, the first run may print, I don't know, 9, let's do that way, 23 and 19. Any ideas how to? We are generating random numbers on this way. It's between 0 to this large number. I would want to print out and control my random number generation. Let's say I just have Pokemons 15 through 27 left, and I would like to pick one of them randomly or two of them randomly to fight. So how would I pick from those? I will have to set the range of the random numbers. I'll have to set the starting point of the random numbers. Currently, the starting number is 0 and the range is int max. If you scroll to the rand libraries thing, It says it as well. Return value is a pseudo random integer value between 0 and rand max inclusive. What is rand max? If we click on that, well, this is rand max. It has been defined. It has been guaranteed to be at least 3276767. But as you can see, it is larger in larger systems as well. It is usually the same as the largest integer number that can be possible. It also defined as int max. Any ideas on how to generate random numbers within the range? If you guys are stuck, I'll give you another uh, question on MS Teams, let's say. Modify this code to print out random numbers such that it is always between 0 to 9. I wonder what do I do such that a number will always return a number between 0 to 9. On 10, 10, 1, 9, 10. And any ideas? None? Okay, so first let's do the 0 to 9 thing. Random numbers are getting generated, right? So let me first just open this up. Random numbers are getting generated, so I'll just write it out very nicely instead of this clutter. So let's just say srand. I'm going to pass the parameter time directly here and null into time. So basically these are two function calls. I am first calling srand, first I'm calling time to get the current time and passing that value into srand like this. And then we can just say int r1 equals to rand, and let's say int r2 equals to rand as well. Both of these ideally will get two different numbers. And once we have that, we can then print out r1 and r2. So r1 is this endl, and cout r2 is this endl, and we get the values. Some two random numbers. I can verify if I run it again, I get this thing. By the way, a quick factoid, random numbers for time for computers start at around 1970s. Before that, computers believe that time does not exist. So this time number is literally the number of seconds after 1970 or number of milliseconds after 1970 or whatnot. Why 1970? It's when Unix and Linux was invented. Computers do not have a concept of time before that. It was an issue in Apple iPhones in a couple of years back. The calendar did not go back in time that much. Anyway, so yeah, so we were running this code and we get two random numbers. And what I want to do is make sure that these two random numbers are always between, let's say, 0 and 9. Well, if that is the case, I have a quick question. If you guys can see these two random numbers, I want you guys to answer yes or no, either on Discord or MS Teams. If you guys agree that these two are random numbers, do you guys agree that the last digit of this random number is also a random number? Yes or no? That is last digit of random number is also a random number. Do you really care what number if it is a random number, right? So essentially, we can always just print out or not. Whether if you just want to print out the last digit, we can technically do a mod 10. And if that is the case, then essentially it is going to print out a random number as well, right? Because the last digit is also a random number. Let me ask everybody who has not typed in an answer. So Jackson Ashton has done. Uh, Anisha, Santos, Anurag, Tara, France, Kevin, Karim, Seth, Sandra, Lance. Do you guys agree that the last digit of a random number is also a random number? Levi, Shadrach, Kennedy. Cool, cool, cool. So what he can do is, let's do one thing. R1 equals to R1 mod 10. R2 equals to R2 mod 10. This can also be written as R1 mod equals to 10, which we will not write it. That's a stupid way to write, even if it's C++. It's such a complicated way to explain this thing. But yeah, you can do that if you want to. And now we will get a last digit of this random number. So if I run it, I get 8 and 0. If I run it again, I get 1 and 1. Ooh. If I run it again, I get 5 and 4. If I run it again, I get 3 and 6. If I run it again, I get 9 and 1, and so on and so forth. Makes sense? Cool. If this makes sense, then hey, what's the difference between 15 and 27? Let's see. Calci 27 minus 15. Well, that's 12. Well, I can generate numbers even with not the last digit, but I can also generate numbers from 0 to 11 by just saying mod 12, right? This would have become mod 12 and mod 12, right? Let me change this to 10 and 10. But I can also generate numbers between 0 to 11 by modding with 12 instead. So that would basically be 1, 7, 2, 8. Come on, one more than 10. 11, come on, let's do 11. This, as you can see, is also a good dice generator. All you have to do is do a mod 6, and that's your random dice generator if you guys are into playing games. 9 and 5, 5 and 10, 9 and 4, 2 and 5, come on, 1, 11. What are the chances that I get a 11 though? It's 1 of 11. Technically 2 of 11, I have two numbers, right? So it's an addition. Oh, I got 11. You guys saw, right? It's recorded. You saw that. Last time I got 11. Anywho, so that was the basic idea. And you can generate this thing. Now, can we use this to generate numbers between 15 and 27? Can you guys now modify this code? So I'll type this out here. Modify this code to generate random numbers between 15 and 27. I'll give you guys 5 minutes. I'll come and ask you again in 10:43. Please paste all of the code on Discord or even in MS Teams. That's fine. Let me know if you have any questions, though. I'll happily help you out. If your code is the same as another person's code, Even then, please feel free to submit your version of the code. I will still like to check it. I want everybody to copy this code, last code on Discord, and modify it such that it generates two random numbers between 15 and 27. I can do mod 28. That way I will get numbers from 0 to 27. I wonder how to make sure that I get, well, this one does work out, but 1 and 7 is also there. 14 and 3 is also there. So I sort of need to set the starting point of the code. Yep. And then essentially that hash capital C time for Kara comes in because Discord is also, formatting it differently. But this is the correct code. You can also do the triple tilde thing for code. Plus 15 basically shifts all of the random numbers by 15. And then on top of it, you're adding up to 11 a random number to generate those random numbers, right? So we can do that essentially. So I'll have 12 here, 12 here, and then 15 plus here, and a 15 plus here. In terms of parenthesis, Kara, can you guys check Kara's code and tell me, would we need parenthesis around the RAND statement or not? I mean, in the order of precedence, what happens first, the plus or the mod operator? Order of precedence, plus or mod. If we go back to our slides, it is in there somewhere. Hold on. In I think if condition slides, it had a slide for order of operations. Hold on. I think control flow part 2. Yep. So these are the order of operations, right? So as you can see, uh, these are unary operators, unary plus, unary minus. This is not the same as a plus b or a minus b. This is just minus b, minus c, and so on. This is the binary plus and minus. And you can see this is the higher precedence, mod operator, multiplication, division, like normal, that word mass or whatever that thing. And essentially you have the mod operator, and then you have the plus sign afterwards. So mod happens first, I guess. Yep. You guys also say the same thing. Cool. Any questions so far? Cool. If there are no other questions, that's pretty much it for. No, not yet. Hold on. Need to write a function. So what we will do is we will sort of cheat and we will write our own function, but it will still generate a random number. Let's say it will generate two random numbers and add them together. Okay. So what we will do is we will write our custom function. Int var equals to custom or my custom function. My custom function. It will not Yeah. Let's say that it will take in two arguments. One is a start value and one is the end value. Ooh, that is fun. Let's say int start is going to be 15, int end is going to be 27. Now notice where I'm going to write the function. I am going to be writing the function above this main. This is the first time we are writing something above main. I mean, not these parts. And remember, we are going to follow this signature. The signature being, where was that? Return value of the function or return thing of the function, the name of the function, list of inputs, and the processing block and return. So let us write our first function. I'm going to ask you guys a question. This is what I'm thinking, what my function will look like. Can you guys tell me what does this function, what should this function return? Is it going to return a character or a single integer or two integers? What is it going to return? I am expecting to store the result here. I think that's a more complicated question. Let me write out the function first, then we can analyze. Hold on. So I'm going to say that my function returns so that's all commented out. And I'm going to say that my name of the function is my custom function, the function that I thought of writing. I can actually just remove this for now and we will just write it first and then we will call it. So my custom function, it will take in two arguments. Unlike the rand function that took in no arguments, srand did take in one argument. We will take in two arguments, start and end of our random number. So let's say int start comma int end. That is how you separate out and list out the parameters you need for the function. This is the same as the diagram that we were doing for that function diagram. Where was it? This one where I had some input. Sorry about the black thing. You can download it and see it, or I'll just, open in browser, right? So we have some inputs, we have some outputs. And so in our case, we have two inputs and we will be outputting one number that is a random number between the range of start and end. So let's say int, and then we have the curly brackets open and we will be returning something. This time we will be returning the value of result. So we are going to create a variable inside this block of code. We are going to say result, initialize this to 0 for now, and we will then have a process block. Functions usually do not have an input block because the inputs are already provided as parameters. We are going to assume that the inputs are coming in already. This code already assumes that start and end has been filled out correctly. Main, whenever it calls it, will be filling it out correctly. And then it receives the start and end, and it is going to compute this thing. I'm going to copy your code that generated the random number from 15 and 27. So this one, rand mod 12 plus 15. And instead of making this rand mod 12 plus 15, I'm just going to make this more general. And I'm going to say this is rand mod range plus start. Okay, so start I already have from here. I need a range. So int range equals to end minus start. And now I have range that I can pass and I can say result equals to this thing, and we will now say return result. Once it returns the result, it is going to go out as an integer because result is an integer. And then essentially we can call this function int random equals to my custom function with my start value with my end value as 15, and then we can just print it out, cout rand number, and let's do it once more. That we are not doing the srand thing though, so let us actually do the srand thing as well so that we get random numbers every time. So I'm going to basically have this, which means that I'm going to paste it here, which also means that every time you call this function, the seed is going to be set again and again and again with the current time. So this is in a sense more random than your random numbers. So we are printing out twice. So I'll just generate, you know what, int random rand underscore num, because we don't want to create int random again and again. I will just create it once, store it into here. So to get the first random number, print it out, get the second random number, print it out again. And if we run this code, it is now calling the functions. What now? So this is a code. Kindly anybody help me run this code and tell me what is the output you get. And once you get the output, tell me why am I getting that output? Why are the two numbers same? Check if it is the same for you guys as well and tell me why are the two outputs same. As you do that, let me go through this code. It starts here, ends here. Let me walk you through the code. I will debug. I'll teach you how to debug in a second later in a later class. So I am here. Start is 0 for now. Step into start is 15. Start is 27. I go to that function. I set the random thing. I step over, get a result. Result is now 12. I return the result back. I print out the result that is 12. And then I again go inside the function. I execute, set the thing, get a new result. Well, this time result is 25, or last time I think it was 15. This time it is 25. If I click on continue, I get 25. And the last number I got, I think, was 15. If I do this step by step, it's working. But if I am doing this in one go, I'm getting the same number. Can you guys guess why? Because in the code, you are calling this function twice, and this function is going to, let me stop. This function is going to set the seed every time, and the machine is so fast that the seed is the same because you are setting the seed with time. The machine is so fast because, yes, it's the same time. You guys are correct. And so we cannot seed the thing inside the function call. We should be seeding it at the beginning of main and never again. That way it is going to, time is going to move forward. And if we run this now, we get different numbers because there is some small time difference as they pass through. Cool. And no, not as they pass through, sorry to say, the seed is set once and it is generating next random numbers every time. That is why now you will get different random numbers. Is this making sense how we wrote our own custom function now, that we can pass any range Now, if we want to, we can pass in any range to this particular function. Let's say I want from 100 to I don't know, let's say 289, or let's say something more smaller. Let's test it out. I want to generate random numbers between 4 and let's say 9, right? If I run this now, I get 6788 4674, always between 4 and 9, right? So you basically have your own custom function. You can name this function anything, that takes two parameters, start and end, computes a random number and returns a random number. We will draw the thing next class, how to draw flowchart diagrams with function calls. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Any questions so far? If none, cool. That's it for today. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Tanner. Bye bye.